Hi, I'm Mark and I'm passionate about English. Welcome to another mini lesson. How's it going? How are you doing? How are things? Okay, so in this mini lesson I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be reading a magazine article. Now there are 4 skills, or what teachers call 4 skills: speaking, listening, reading and writing. And often if you do an exam or you're in a language school, these will be treated fairly equally. But in my opinion, writing is not so important. I mean, how often are you going to write in English? I don't write that much in English myself. Reading is something you can easily do on your own. And of course the benefits of learning English by reading is you can take your time, you can look up the words, and but the one problem is you don't know the pronunciation of the words. Speaking, of course, speaking is the more you speak, the more you practice speaking, the better you will become. But many of you find it difficult. My belief is that listening is the most important skill. And a lot of what you do with English could be watching TV, listening to the radio, songs, and of course speaking to people. You have to listen. So listening to me is the really essential part of learning English. And also, when you compare speaking and listening, your passive vocabulary or your passive knowledge of English compared to your active vocabulary, your active knowledge of English can be very, very different. So in this reading there are going to be a lot of words which of course for me are not difficult, but maybe I haven't used these words for months and months or even years, but of course I know them. So what you need to learn, you don't actually have to say. It's more a case of recognizing them when you hear them. Anyway, this is an example of what I'm going to be doing in my 12 courses. The first course begins in September. And each lesson, well, I've been saying about 3 hours, but actually they're going to be at least 3 hours. Different sections, but one of the sections will be a reading. There will also be an interview with somebody, a questionnaire, some idioms, phrasal verbs, collocations, songs, jokes, and as promised, some slang, naughty words. Lots and lots of things, and also tips on how to learn English. Okay, so listen to this. I'm just going to read it through the first time, and if you listen to it several times, you will start to understand it much more easily. And you might say, well, it's just one article, but of course these words are gonna, well, the phrasal verb actually is crop up in a lot of other articles or on TV and so on. So the more you become familiar with these different words, the more chance you have of recognizing them when you hear them again. Okay, so this is a story from a magazine. It's under the title of Life Story, and it's a very good example because it's written in the first person. So it's about a woman who met somebody on a train and they eventually got married. So I'll read it the first time and then I will go through it again and explain lots of the words, and then if you listen to it again it should be much easier for you. Alright, so let me just put this down. So that's my piece of paper going down. Oh, and one other thing, the topic of this is falling in love, and I guess it's something we're all interested in, but eventually on my website there will also be a business course. I'll do a beginner's course. And actually I'm going to put some yoga lessons on, some meditation lessons on. And even I'm going to start doing some courses to help if you want to learn Italian or French or German, Turkish, Japanese, and so on. Alright, so here we go. Let me just read it. The title is I Fell in Love on the Train. And the other thing I should say, the name of the person she fell in love with is Mark, but this is just coincidence. Coincidence means by chance. It's not that I chose this because of the name. Okay, so this is the first reading. Like most little boys, my sons love seeing the trains whiz past at the station as they wait for their daddy to return from work. But what my boys don't know yet is that if it wasn't for those trains, they wouldn't be here. I first saw Mark in 2003 as we waited for the commuter train to London after he moved to Hitchin to start a new job. A new face among the suits on the platform. He was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. Olive skin, dark brown eyes, no wedding ring. I engineered it so we became carriage buddies, although we never spoke and he rarely looked up from his book. One day I tried to get his attention by dropping my ticket. He picked it up and we exchanged our first words. "You dropped this?" he said, looking up at me. "Thanks," I squeaked before I blushed and went back to my magazine. Almost a year passed, and fed up of first dates with guys who weren't trainman, I decided to write him a note. It was my 28th birthday, so I scribbled down that I thought he looked lovely, that everyone should do something silly on their birthday, and he should email me if he'd like to go for a drink. As the train pulled into King's Cross, I went to make my move, but my nerves collapsed, and I walked straight past him, the note clutched in my hand. 10 mornings later, with the note a little more crumpled, I finally did it. "Excuse me, can I give you this?" I whimpered. He didn't hear. "Sorry," he said, looking confused. When I repeated it, the whole carriage seemed to go silent, all eyes on me. "Sure," he said, baffled, as I scuttled away. Trainman kept me waiting all day before emailing his rejection. He said how brave I was, but he had a girlfriend. Of course he did. Guys like him do. "Have a great birthday," he added. It wasn't my birthday anymore. I was gutted. The next morning we exchanged awkward smiles. His out of kindness, mine to let him know I wasn't a bunny boiler. I was tempted to move to another carriage, but thinking that might make things worse, I continued as before, and we still didn't speak. I went on first dates that never made it to a second. I hoped to see trainman tipsy on late trains home so we could talk, but we never did. Then, one Friday afternoon, 8 months later, I received an email. Trainman had split up with his girlfriend and was now single. He had been for a few months, and wondered if I still fancied that drink. Be cool, I thought, but replied straight away. The next night we met in our local pub. I worried he wouldn't be the man I'd imagined, but it was the best first date ever. We talked easily and had so much in common. A love of books, music, and all things Spanish. Later that evening, I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and said confidently to myself, I love him. I knew that night we would spend the rest of our lives together. Within days, he moved in with me, and I'm lucky that it's been perfect ever since. 3 years later, we quit our jobs to travel the world for 12 months. Halfway through the trip, Mark proposed, fittingly on a train in the Australian desert. Felix was a honeymoon baby. Then the following year we had Max. We still feel like we are on the journey of a lifetime. Okay, so actually I found this, I have to confess, I found this article when I was at a doctor's surgery, and I kind of thought, oh, that's really nice. It's got lots of useful language. And I took the magazine, or you could say I stole the magazine. But of course they have lots of magazines, and usually the magazines are quite old, so I don't feel so bad about that. Alright, so now I'm going to go through it again and explain lots of the words to you. Okay, like most little boys, my son loves seeing the trains whiz past the station as we wait for their daddy to return from work. Okay, whiz means go very quickly. So if a train doesn't stop at a station, it goes through, and of course it's going very fast. So whiz means to move very fast. Daddy, of course, means father. But what my boys didn't know yet is if it wasn't for those trains, they wouldn't be here. Because of course later you realize that she did get together with the man on the train, had 2 sons. But if trains didn't exist, or the trains she travelled on, then they would never have met. I first saw Mark in 2003 as we waited for the commuter train to London. Commuter train is a train which people take to go to work. Of course, could be people on it for other reasons, but basically it's a morning or evening train when there are lots and lots of commuters on it. So to commute is to go back and forth to work. Of course, it doesn't have to be on a train. You might commute by car or bicycle or bus or something else. After he moved to Hitching to start a new job. A new face among the suits. Okay, so when she says among the suits, of course most people commuting to work are wearing suits. A jacket and trousers, matching jacket and trousers, and with a tie and shirt. He was the most beautiful man. Oh, sorry, on the a new face among the suits on the platform. Platform is the place you stand on, waiting for the train. He was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. Okay, here is a good example of the past perfect. Okay, as I've said, you've probably learned so much grammar and spent a lot of time, but that doesn't help you speak and understand English so well. But if I say, this is the best flat, sorry, it was the best holiday I'd ever been on, or it was the best meal I'd ever eaten, or she was the most beautiful girl I'd ever met. These are all examples of past perfect. And the more you hear them or read them, the more you'll understand them naturally. That's my belief. Of course, you need to study them a little bit, but if you just study them, well, we could say study them to death, which means study, 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 study. It doesn't mean you will still be able to use them or recognize them so well. So, yeah, if you hear them naturally, like with me talking or on the radio or on TV, slowly, I think, or unconsciously, you will understand them more and more. Olive skin, dark brown eyes, no wedding ring. Okay, so obviously no wedding ring, probably, or definitely he was single, which was good for her. I engineered it so we became carriage buddies. Engineered it means I kind of managed it or worked it out, and so on. So we became carriage buddies. Buddies just means kind of friends, or in this case, not very close friends, but somehow because they were going commuting every day, kind of friends. And carriage, so on a train you have lots of different sections, and they are called carriages on a train. Although we never spoke and he rarely looked up from his book. Okay, looked up, of course, phrasal verb. One day I tried to get his attention by dropping my ticket. He picked it up, phrasal verb, and we exchanged our first words. You dropped this, he said, looking up at me. Thanks, I squeaked. Squeaked is like she said, sort of nervously in a high voice, because she's nervous, before I blushed. Blushed is kind of when you're embarrassed and maybe you go a little bit red in the face. And went back to my magazine. Went back to my magazine just means she started reading her magazine again. Almost a year passed, and fed up of first dates. Fed up in this case means you're just tired of first dates, or we often say sick and tired. So her dates that she tried with other guys just weren't working. She didn't meet anybody she really liked. With guys who weren't Train Man. Okay, so in this case, she's nicknamed him Train Man because she didn't know his name. I decided to write him a note. It was my 28th birthday, so I scribbled down that I thought he looked lovely. Scribbled down means just sort of wrote down, maybe not so carefully, on just a little piece of paper. So it's not a letter or anything formal. She just wrote down some words. That everyone should do something silly on their birthday. Silly is another word for kind of stupid, but in this case not in a bad way. And he should email me if he'd like to go for a drink. As the train pulled into King's Cross, I went to make my move. King's Cross is one of the main stations in London, and could be the one that Harry Potter goes from to Hogwarts School, but I might be wrong. Okay, and to make my move means to sort of try and do what I wanted to do. I'm just thinking there's a good song, Make Your Move, but I can't remember who it's by. But my nerves collapsed. Okay, if a building collapses when it falls down, and in this case she's using it as a kind of metaphor that her nerves, her courage just disappeared or fell down. And I walked straight past him, the note clutched in my hand. Clutched means to hold tightly. So she's nervous, so she's holding it very tightly. 10 mornings later, with a note a little more crumpled. Okay, crumpled because if you write on a piece of paper it's nice and flat, but because she's held it in her hand very tightly, and then she opened it again, it's not completely flat anymore, it's crumpled. Alright, I finally did it. Excuse me, can I give you this? I whimpered. Okay, so whimpered is maybe a word I've never ever used in my life. But again, of course, I know what it means. Whimpered because she's sort of nervous and shy and embarrassed. She doesn't say it confidently. So, excuse me, can I give you this? He didn't hear. Sorry? He looked... sorry. Sorry, he said, looking confused. When I repeated it, the whole carriage, or all of the carriage, all of the people in the carriage, seemed to go silent. Seemed is the word here, so maybe they didn't, but she felt that happened. All eyes on me, so again she felt that everyone was looking at her, but probably they weren't. Sure, he said, baffled, as I scuttled away. So again, two words which maybe I've not used for a long time or ever. Baffled is kind of another word for sort of confused or surprised. Scuttled away means she kind of moved away, again, nervously, not confidently. Train man kept me waiting all day before emailing his rejection. Rejection, of course, is no to the drink. He said how brave I was, but he had a girlfriend. Of course he did. Guys like him do. So that just means because she thought he was very handsome and a lovely guy, then probably he already had a girlfriend. Have a great birthday, he added. It wasn't my birthday anymore because it's 10 days later. I was gutted. Okay, this is quite a useful word. Gutted means I was really disappointed. Gutted. It'll be at the bottom of the screen. The next morning we exchanged awkward smiles. So awkward is like not natural. His out of kindness, mine to let him know I wasn't a bunny boiler. So this is a kind of reference to the film Basic Instinct, where the other woman actually puts a rabbit, actually the pet rabbit, in the saucepan. So when Michael Douglas comes home, he sees that and she's trying to be nasty to him. Great movie, and Michael Douglas, one of my favourite actors. I was tempted to move to another carriage, but thinking that might make things worse, I continued as before, and we still didn't speak. I went on first dates that never made it to a second. Okay, so she went out for a drink or a meal with some other men, some other guys, but nothing came of it. So she didn't have a second date or a third date or fourth date. I hoped to see Trainman tipsy on late trains home so we could talk, but we never did. Okay, tipsy is a very useful word, which I do use. And it was in the lesson with Nobber when we were talking about drinking expressions, drink like a fish, on the house, and so on. Tipsy just means a little bit under the influence of alcohol. So not drunk, but just kind of more relaxed and chilled and maybe more willing to do things that you wouldn't normally do. Then one afternoon, 8 months later, I received an email. Trainman had split up with his girlfriend and was now single. So you can see there's actually several phrasal verbs in this article with up. And this is another one I taught you in the phrasal verb lesson where I did lots of phrasal verbs with up. Split up, it means he just broke up or stopped the relationship with his girlfriend. Or maybe she stopped it. He had been, this is also, sometimes when you read things, it's very difficult to know where to put the emphasis. He had been for a few months and wondered if I still fancied that drink. Okay, again, I think I did this with Nobber in the drinking lesson a few weeks ago. So we often say in English, not would you like to go out for a drink, but do you fancy going out for a drink? You need to put ing if you use fancy. Or do you fancy going to the movies? Or do you fancy meeting for a coffee? Do you fancy a game of racquetball? It's a very, very useful expression. So I really recommend you learn that. And just to make it clear, would you like to go out for a drink? Do you fancy going out for a drink? Would you like to meet for coffee? Do you fancy meeting for coffee? Okay, be cool, I thought, but replied straight away. Straight away is another, the other meaning is immediately. So often when we meet someone, we try to be, we don't respond straight away, try and be cool, not show too much interest, but that can be a mistake. So straight away means immediately. The next night we met in our local pub. If you don't know, pub is so many pubs in Britain. It's not exactly the same as a bar, and pub actually is short for public house. It's usually quite big. Probably they got food. Maybe they have some entertainment. Some nights music or a quiz or different things. Karaoke. I worried he wouldn't be the man I'd imagined, but it was the best first date ever. We talked easily and had so much in common. Okay, in common is very, very useful. If you have things in common with someone, you like the same things, or you enjoy doing the same things, or same interests. So, for example, Graham, who was in another mini lesson with me, one thing we have in common is we both enjoy playing racquetball, and another thing we have in common is we both love music. Maybe there are some other things, but of course it's good to have things in common if you are friends, or actually if you are boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. A love of books, music, and all things Spanish. So all things Spanish just means the language, the food, the culture, and so on. Later that evening, I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and said confidently to myself, I love him. I knew that night we would spend the rest of our lives together. Well, of course she couldn't really know, but she hoped. Within days, he moved in with me. Okay, moved in means she has a flat or a house, and he left or gave up his house or flat, and they lived together. And actually it says within days, so that's very, very quickly, but obviously they felt strongly about each other and were confident of their relationship. And I'm lucky that it's been perfect ever since. 3 years later, we quit our jobs to travel the world for 12 months. Quit's a very useful word, means we just stopped, finished, or another phrasal verb, gave up our jobs. Halfway through the trip, Mark proposed. Proposed, of course, means, will you marry me? And the noun, a proposal. Fittingly on a train in the Australian desert. Fittingly means appropriately, because it's on a train and that's where she met him. So it seemed like the right thing and the right place to do it. Felix was a honeymoon baby. Okay, so that means she became pregnant, or she conceived during their honeymoon. Then the following year we had Max, so that means the second son. We still feel like we are on the journey of a lifetime. So the journey of a lifetime means it's the best thing she's ever done, meeting this guy, Mark, and she's obviously still happy. I don't know if they're still together, because I'm not sure when this article was written and when she was interviewed, but it sounds like they probably are, but who knows. Things change and life happens. Okay, so what I would really recommend you do, I'll have put all the captions, those words that I explained at the bottom. So already you should become more familiar with those words if you listen again. But if you're serious about improving your English, and I hope you are, then I would really listen to this a few times, maybe in the car or on your iPod when you're commuting to work. And slowly, it'll just, not just the words, but the whole listening to things in English will become easier for you. All right, so that's your mini lesson today. I will do another reading mini lesson in August. In a way, perhaps these seem a bit boring compared to when I interview someone. But of course, one problem with interviewing people is sometimes they ramble on and go off the point and use words and expressions which are too many words and expressions for me to explain in the captions at the bottom of the screen. So in some way this is a more useful lesson, although perhaps not so entertaining. All right, so yes, as I said, I will do another reading mini lesson. Hi again. As I explained in a previous mini lesson, my camera switches off or times out after 30 minutes, and it just timed out before I'd finished the mini lesson. I could say damn. Well, when I uploaded it onto my laptop, I could say damn, or bugger, or shit, or even fuck. Okay, so as I've said before, I'm not going to do too many naughty words in the mini lessons, but I will really explain a lot of that stuff in the courses. And of course, you won't get this in high school or in a language school, even if teachers want to teach that kind of language, because of the people who own the school and so on, who usually are quite conservative. And of course, some students don't want to hear that or might be offended. So you don't get the chance to learn the naughty words, swear words, bad language, whatever you call it. So as I said or at the end of the mini lesson, but it timed out, I'm going to do another reading lesson, a mini lesson in August, and then in every lesson in each course there will be a similar kind of reading lesson where I read it, then I explain the words, the expressions which I think you'll find difficult, and then I would really recommend you listen to it a few times, and it will become much easier for you. Okay, so I will now just pause, and although the camera time's off after 30 minutes, I can still add on into my well, at the moment I use something called Live Movie Maker, although I have subscribed to Adobe Creative Suite, but which is a little bit expensive, but I haven't familiarized myself with that yet. But hopefully by the second course in October I will be using a much better editing program. So I'm going to pause and then just give you a little bit of Louisa, my baby seagull. If you're interested, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But hopefully tomorrow I'm going to actually try and release her in Poole Harbour. She may not be ready, but I'll try. I'll give it a go. Okay, so I'm just going to pause. So here she is. She basically, I let her out in the garden during the day, and then she sleeps in my conservatory in the evening. We have a lot of foxes in Britain, just living in the towns, and there's always a risk that a fox might be able to climb over the fence and attack her and eat her. So I have to be a little bit careful. The loud noise you can hear are my lovebirds. She likes to sit next to the aviary, and yeah, obviously she hasn't really met any other seagulls for a few weeks. So I'm just going to go down a bit and she'll stand up. Okay, Louisa, how you doing? Are you going to stand up? Okay, she's not. So I can get very close. She probably will stand up soon. But yeah, there she goes. Okay, she is... yeah, you can see if you've watched previous clips of her, she's got much bigger. Her wings are nearly fully developed. Of course, seagulls are usually white, but I don't think that will change for a little while. But she should be able to fly very soon. Okay, that's the end of today's mini lesson. Thank you, and see you in the next one. Bye for today.